Maccibiym Shelishiy, 3rd Maccabees, chapter 1. Now when Philopator, on learning from those who came back that Antiochus had made himself master of the places which belonged to himself, sent orders to all his footmen and horsemen, took with him his sister Arsinoe, and marched out as far as the parts of Raphia, where Antiochus and his forces encamped. And one Theodotus, intending to carry out his design, took with him the bravest of the armed men, who had been before committed to his trust by Ptolemy, and got through at night to the tent of Ptolemy to kill him on his own responsibility, and so to end the war. But Dositheus, called the son of Drimulus, by birth a Yehudi, afterward a renegade from the Torah and observances of his country, conveyed Ptolemy away, and made an obscure person lie down in his stead in the tent. It befell this man to receive the fate which was meant for the other. A fierce battle then took place, and the men of Antiochus prevailing. Arsinoe continually went up and down the ranks, and with disheveled hair, with tears and entreaties, begged the soldiers to fight manfully for themselves, their children and women, and promised that if they proved conquerors, she would give them 2 minae of gold apiece. It thus fell out that their enemies were defeated in hand-to-hand encounter, and that many of them were taken prisoners. Having vanquished this attempt, the king then decided to proceed to the neighboring cities and encourage them. By doing this, and by making donations to their temples, he inspired his subjects with confidence. The Yahudim sent some of their council and of their elders to him. The greetings, guest gifts, and congratulations of the past bestowed by them filled him with the greater eagerness to visit their city. Having arrived at Yerushalayim, sacrificed and offered thank offerings to Elohim Hagadol, the great Elohim, and done whatsoever else was suitable to the sanctity of the place, and entered the inner court. He was so struck with the magnificence of the place, and so wondered at the orderly arrangements of the temple, that he considered entering the sanctuary itself. And when they told him that this was not permissible, none of the nation, no, nor even the priests in general, but only the supreme high priest of all, and he only once in a year, being allowed to go in, he would by no means give way. Then they read the Torah to him, but he persisted in obtruding himself, exclaiming that he ought to be allowed, and saying, be it that they were deprived of this honor, I thought not to be. And he put the question, why, when he entered all the temples, none of the priests who were present forbade him? He was thoroughly answered by some, that he did wrong to boast of this. Well, since I have done this, said he, be the cause what it may, shall I not enter, with or without your consent? And when the priests fell down in their sacred vestments, imploring Elohim Hagadol, the great Elohim, to come and help in time of need, and to avert the violence of the fierce aggressor, and when they filled the temple with lamentation and tears, then rose who had been left behind in the city. Then those who had been left behind in the city were scared and rushed forth, uncertain of the event. Virgins who had been shut up within their chambers came out with their mothers, scattering dust and ashes on their heads, and filling the streets with outcries. Women, but recently separated off, left their bridal chambers, left the reserve that befitted them, and ran about the city in a disorderly manner. Newborn babies were deserted by the mothers or nurses who waited upon them, some here, some there, in houses or in fields. These now, with an ardor which could not be checked, swarmed into Al-Yon's temple. Various were the prayers offered up by those who assembled in this place on account of the unholy attempt of the king. Along with these, there were some of the citizens who took courage and would not submit to his obstinacy and his intention of carrying out his purpose, calling out to arms and to die bravely in defense of the Torah of their fathers. They created a great uproar in the place and were with difficulty brought back by the aged and the elders to the station of prayer which they had occupied before. During this time, the multitude kept on praying. The elders who surrounded the king strove in many ways to divert his haughty mind from the design which he had formed. He, in his hardened mood, insensible to all persuasion, was going onwards with the view of carrying out this design. Yet even his own officers, when they saw this, joined the Yahudim in an appeal to him who has all power to aid in the present crisis and not wink at such overweening iniquity. Such was the frequency and vehemence of the cry of the assembled crowd that an indescribable noise ensued. Not the men only, but the very walls and floor seemed to sound forth, all things preferring dissolution rather than to see the place defiled. Chapter 2. Now was it that the high priest Shimon bowed his knees over against the Kodesh place and spread out his hands in reverent form and uttered the following supplication: O Yahweh, Yahweh, King of the Shemayim, heavens, and ruler of the whole creation, Kodesh, among the Kodesh, sole governor, Al Shaddai, give ear to us who are oppressed by a wicked and profane one who exults in his confidence and strength. It is you, the creator of all, Yahweh, of the universe, who are a righteous governor and judge all who act with pride and insolence. It was you who did destroy the former workers of unrighteousness, among who were the Nephilim, who trusted in their strength and hardihood by covering them with a measureless flood. It was you who did make the Sodomim, those workers of exceeding iniquity, men notorious for their vices, an example to after generations, when you did cover them with fire and brimstone. You did make known your power when you caused the bold Pharaoh, the enslaver of your people, to pass through the ordeal of many and diverse inflictions. And you rolled the depths of the sea over him when he made pursuit with chariots and with a multitude of followers, and gave a safe passage to those who put their trust in you. Yahweh of the whole creation, these saw and felt the works of your hands, and praised you, Al Shaddai, you, O King, when you created the illimitable and measureless earth, did choose out this city. You did make this place sacred to your name, albeit you need nothing. You did glorify it with your illustrious presence, after constructing it to the kavod, glory, of your great and honorable name. And you did promise out of love to the people of Yashar'al that should we fall away from you and become afflicted, and then come to this house and pray, you would hear our prayer. Indeed, you are faithful and true. And when you did often aid our fathers when hard pressed and in low estate, and delivered them out of great dangers, see now, Kodesh King, how through our many and great sins we are borne down and made subject to our enemies, and are become weak and powerless. We, being in this low condition, this bold and profane man seeks to dishonor this, your Kodesh place, consecrated out of the earth to the name of your majesty. Your dwelling place, the Shamayim of Shamayim, is indeed unapproachable to men. But since it seemed good to you to exhibit your kavod among your people, Yashar'al, you did sanctify this place. Punish us not by means of the uncleanness of their men, nor chastise us by means of their profanity, lest the Torahless ones should boast in their rage and exult in exuberant pride of speech and say, we have trampled upon the Kodesh house as idolatrous houses are trampled upon. Blot out our iniquities and do away with our errors and show forth your compassion in this hour. Let your mercies quickly go before us. Grant us peace, that the cast down and broken-hearted may praise you with their mouth. At that time, Elohim, who sees all things, who is beyond all Kodesh, among the Kodesh, heard that prayer, so suitable, and scourged the man greatly uplifted with scorn and insolence, shaking him to and fro as a reed is shaken with the wind. He cast him upon the pavement, powerless, with limbs paralyzed by a righteous judgment, deprived of the faculty of speech. His friends and bodyguards, beholding the swift recompense which had suddenly overtaken him, struck with exceeding terror, and fearing that he would die, speedily removed him. When in course of time he had come to himself, this severe check caused no repentance within him, but he departed with bitter threatening. He proceeded to Mitzrayim, grew worse in wickedness through his before-mentioned companions in wine, who were lost to all goodness, and not satisfied with countless acts of impiety. His audacity so increased that he raised evil reports there, and many of his friends, watching his purpose attentively, joined in furthering his will. His purpose was to indict a public stigma upon our race. Wherefore he erected a pillar at the tower porch, and caused the following inscription to be engraved upon it: that entrance to their own temple was to be refused to all those who would not sacrifice, that all the Yahudim were to be registered among the common people, that those who resisted were to be forcibly seized and put to death, that those who were thus registered were to be marked on their persons by the ivy leaf symbol of Dionysus, and to be set apart with these limited rights. To do away with the appearance of hating them all, he had it written underneath, that if any of them should elect to enter the community of those initiated in the rites, these should have equal rights with the Alexandrians. Some of those who were over the city, therefore, abhorring any approach to the city of piety, unhesitatingly gave in to the king, and expected to derive some great honor from a future connection with him. A nobler Rawak spirit, however, prompted the majority to cling to their religious observances, and by paying money that they might live unmolested, these sought to escape the registration. Cheerfully looking forward to future aid, they abhorred their own apostates, considering them to be national foes, and debarring them from the common usages of social intercourse. Chapter 3. On discovering this, so incensed was the wicked king that he no longer confined his rage to the Yahudim in Alexandria. Laying his hand more heavily upon those who lived in the country, he gave orders that they should be quickly collected into one place, and most cruelly deprived of their lives. While this was going on, an invidious rumor was uttered abroad by men who had band together to injure the Yehudic race. The purport of their charge was that the Yahudim kept them away from the ordinances of the Torah. Now, while the Yahudim always maintained a feeling of unswerving loyalty towards the kings, yet as they worshipped Elohim and observed his Torah, they made certain distinctions and avoided certain things. Hence, some persons held them in odium, although as they adorned their conversation with works of righteousness, they had established themselves in the good opinion of the world. With all the rest of mankind said, was, however, made of no account by the foreigners, who said much of the exclusiveness of the Yahudim with regard to their worship and meats. They alleged that they were men unsociable, hostile to the king's interests, refusing to associate with him or his troops. By this way of speaking, they brought much odium upon them. Nor was this unexpected uproar and sudden conflux of people unobserved by the Yavanim who lived in the city, concerning men who had never harmed them, yet to aid them was not in their power, since all was oppression around. But they encouraged them in their troubles and expected a favorable turn of affairs. He who knows all things will not, said they, disregard so great a people. Some of the neighbors, friends, and fellow dealers of the Yahudim even called them secretly to an interview, pledged them their assistance, and promised to do their very utmost for them. Now the king, elated with his prosperous fortune, and not regarding the superior power of Elohim, but thinking to preserve his present purpose, wrote the following sefer to the prejudice of the Yahudim. King Ptolemy, Philopater, to the commanders and soldiers in Mitzrayim, and in all places, health and happiness. I am right well, and so too are my affairs. Since our Asiatic campaign, the particulars of which ye know, and which by the aid of the Elohim, not lightly given, and by our own vigor, has been brought to a successful issue according to our expectations, we resolved not with strength of spear, but with gentleness and compassion, as it were to nurse the inhabitants of Kole Aram and Phoenicia, and to be their willing benefactors. So, having bestowed considerable sums of money upon the temples of the several cities, we proceeded even as far as Yerushalayim, and went up to honor the temple of these wretched beings who never cease from their folly. To outward appearance they received us willingly, but belied that appearance by their deeds. When we were eager to enter their temple and to honor it with the most beautiful and exquisite gifts, they were so carried away by their old arrogance as to forbid us the entrance, while we, out of our forbearance toward all men, refrained from exercising our power upon them, and thus exhibiting their enmity against us. They alone among the nations lift up their heads against kings and benefactors, as men unwilling to submit to anything reasonable. We then, having endeavored to make allowance for the madness of these persons, and on our victorious return, treating all people in Mitzrayim courteously, acted in a manner which was befitting. Accordingly, bearing no ill will against their kinsmen at Yerushalayim, but rather remembering our connection with them, and the numerous matters with sincere heart from a remote period entrusted to them, we wished to venture a total alteration of their state by bestowing upon them the rights of citizens of Alexandria, and to admit them to the everlasting rights of our solemnities. All this, however, they have taken in a very different ruach spirit, with their innate malignity, They have spurned the fair offer, and constantly inclining to evil, have rejected the inestimable rights. Not only so, but using speech, and by refraining from speech, they abhor the few among them who are heartily disposed towards us, ever deeming that their ignoble course of procedure will force us to do away with our reform. Having then received certain proofs that these Yahudim bear us every sort of ill will, we must look forward to the possibility of some sudden tumult among ourselves, when these impious men may turn traitors and barbarous enemies. As soon, therefore, as the contents of this sefer become known to you, in that same hour we will order those Yahudim who dwell among you, with women and children, to be sent to us, vilified and abused in chains of iron, to undergo a death cruel and ignominious, suitable to men disaffected. For by the punishment of them in one body we perceive that we have found the only means of establishing our affairs for the future on a firm and satisfactory basis. Whosoever shall shield a Yehudi, whether it be old man, child, or suckling, shall with his whole house be tortured to death. Whosoever shall inform against the Yahudim, besides receiving the property of the person charged, shall be presented with 2,000 drachmae from the royal treasury, shall be made free, and shall be crowned. Whatever place shall shelter a Yehudi shall, when he is hunted forth, be put under the ban of fire, and be forever rendered useless to every living being for all time to come. Such was the purport of the king's sefer.